program on Betsy Ross.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Betsy Ross, and I'm an old lady now. It's about 1835, and I live with my daughter Susanna in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For many years, I was a seamstress and an upholsterer, and I'm almost blind now, which is why I live with my daughter. And she said that you were all coming over to visit me, and I'm just so pleased that you're here. She said you all wanted to hear a little bit about my life. Well, I don't have much to tell. But I do have met some special people along the way. And it's been my privilege and my honor to have a part in this wonderful country where we live. In 1752, I was born. I'm a fourth generation American. My great-grandfather was Andrew Griscom. He was a Quaker carpenter. And, I should mention that I was the 8th of 17 children.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that wonderful? My mom and dad didn't give up. My great-grandfather Andrew was a master carpenter. And he immigrated from England to New Jersey in 1680. That was a year before William Penn founded his colony in Pennsylvania. My grandfather met William Penn, and he was quite impressed with him. So we moved to Philadelphia in 1681 to be a part of his holy experiment. As Quakers, we all bound together and tried to help one another. And my grandfather, being a carpenter, he was vital to the community. Both his son and his grandson were master carpenters, and they were a part of the original carpenter union in Philadelphia, and their names are still on the wall today from being carpenters and helping build this country. My father's name was Samuel Grissom. He was born in 1717, and he moved to Philadelphia and helped build the bell tower at Independence Hall. He was a house carpenter, and he met my mother, Rebecca James, who was born in 1721. She was part of a very prominent Quaker merchant family. They married in 1741, and they lived in a large home, for 18 children at 4th and Arch Streets. I grew up in the Quaker church, which is very fortunate because the Quakers felt like women needed an education also, and that we were a vital part of the community. So I was afforded an education all of my growing up years. My father decided that I needed a trade because we all were contributed to our community. And so he apprenticed me to an upholsterer's shop. The owner of the shop's name was William Webster, and there I learned to sew mattresses, chair covers, window blinds. I also became well known for my handwork, and I made curtains, bed covers, tablecloths, rugs, umbrellas. I made quilts, and my needlework won awards all around. Everyone wanted some of my needlework. This is an example of some of the things I used to do in my needlework when I could see better. Well, while I was working in Mr. Webster's shop, I met a young man named John Ross. We fell madly in love. John Ross was an Episcopalian. His father was the assistant rector at the largest Episcopalian church in Philadelphia. And his mother's name was Sarah Leach. His father was Aeneas Ross. John's family was quite prominent in our young country, our fledgling society. His uncle George Ross was a delegate to the Continental Congress, and he was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. John's other uncle was George Reed, who was also a member of the Continental Congress and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. They were good friends with General George Washington. In 1773, I went against my family's wishes because I was in love, and I eloped with John Ross. We crossed the river over into New Jersey and got married. The man who signed our wedding certificate was Governor William Franklin, the son of Benjamin Franklin. My parents were not happy. I was excommunicated from the Quaker Church and all my friends and all my family. but I was very much in love, and John was a good man. He was a good man. So I became a member of Christ Church because I could no longer go to my Quaker church where I had grown up. I sat on pew number 12. Right next to us, in the next pew, were General George and Martha Washington. And every Sunday, we sat right next to the Washingtons. We became very good friends. And because I was a seamstress, General Washington brought fine fabrics to me to make into shirts for him. He loved the ruffles. He loved he loved ruffles on his shirts. He loved them on his cuffs. He loved to dress. He was a very fine dresser. All the ladies liked General Washington. And so I still worked in my upholstery shop. My husband and I made our own shop in 1774. And the economy was hard because times were rough in our young country. And so but we made it do. We made it do. And in 1776, John felt the need to join the Continental Army. He was just a young man. And I was totally supportive of him joining the Army, even though I knew it was a very dangerous thing for him to do. He wasn't in the Army very long. He was patrolling and guarding ammunition barracks in Philadelphia that blew up.
Wow.
And he was mortally wounded. And he only lived for a few days, and I tried to nurse him. I tried to save him. But my husband died. And so here I was, a childless widow at the age of 24. Well, because I was a Quaker and my backbone was pretty stiff, I decided to make a go of it. And I ran our upholstery shop myself. We didn't have children, John and I, but I was going to help any way I could. And I was making tents and blankets, uniforms, gunpowder bags, and flags for the Continental Army. General Washington came to get his shirts. I was such a patriotic person that the soldiers all knew me, and they called me the Little Patriot. In 1776, our shop was going pretty well, and General Washington came to visit, and he brought with him Robert Morris and my uncle, George Ross. They'd been appointed by the Continental Congress as a special committee, a secret committee, to design a flag for the new country. So their mission was very serious, and it was also a dangerous one, because the British obviously were not happy that we were trying to form our own country. General Washington had several ideas that he wanted for the flag, and he sat in my living room and he drew out a design, and he wanted a 6-pointed star. And I said, well, General Washington, I think your design is very nice. And of course, you know, General Washington was used to getting his own way about everything. And I said, but if I'm to make these flags, I need to be able to make them quickly. And so I really would recommend a 5-point star. And General Washington said, well, what difference does it make? And I said, well, I can make a 5-point star with one snip of my scissors. And he said, well, why don't you just show me? And I said, well, all right. I'll show you how to make a 5-point star. And all you have to do is one cut of your scissors. And so I took my material and I folded it just so that I could show General Washington how to do this. And if any of you would like to learn how to make a 5-point star with one snip, I will show you how. And so you fold your material just so. And then you take your scissors. You have a little piece of paper right here. Well, this is material. My daughter gave me these scissors, aren't they pretty? She wanted them bright, shiny, so I could find them. I said. And so you make your snip. And you keep what looks like the trash, and you throw away the extra. And then you have your 5-point star. With one snip. And I'll show you how to do that. So the Continental Congress approved General Washington's design, and the flags were started making. Well, I made flags for the government for 50 years. I never had to worry about a job because I had so many flags to make, in addition to the blankets and the tents. And so, because I was a young widow in Philadelphia, and a lot of people knew who I was, they came in and out of the shops. We had a lot of British troops around. They called me beautiful. And so I felt like it was my job to help out the Continental Army in any way that I could. And so I distracted Carl von Donno in Mount Holly, New Jersey, after the Battle of Ironworks Hill, because I was such a distraction in the social registers that it kept his forces out of the Battle of Trenton. In 1777, I married Captain Joseph Ashburn, who was a mariner. The British soldiers forcibly took over our home. My husband was not there, and I was home to the British soldiers. I used that opportunity to listen, and I listened well, so that I could relay messages when I was able. My daughter, Ascilla Ashburn, was born in 1779, and she died as an infant. We lost our first child. I kept working for the Army and for the Continental Congress, and I stuffed paper tube cartridges with musket balls for the Continental Army. In 1780, my husband Joseph, who was a sea captain, was commissioned to go to the British Isles in the West Indies for military supplies. On the way, his ship was captured by a British frigate. He was charged with treason and convicted, and he was sent to a horrible prison called Oldwell Prison in Plymouth, England. It was a horrible place. In 1781, unbeknownst to my husband, our daughter Elizabeth Ashburn was born. I continued to make quilts and blankets for the Army. And in 1782, Joseph died in the Old Mill Prison several months after Cornwallis's surrender. One of the people that was also in prison was a seaman named John Claypool, who'd been one of my suitors in younger years. John and my husband had become close friends because they were together in this horrible prison. And John came to Philadelphia personally to tell me that my husband had died and to bring me his last loving words. I was again a widow at the age of 30. Well, I rekindled my friendship with John Claypool, and we got married in 1783 in Christ Church. He was a good man. 3 times I found happiness. We joined the Free Quakers Church because they had gathered together and they were in agreement that we needed to fight the war for freedom. The original Quaker Church didn't support fighting, and the Free Quaker Church did, so I was able to go back to where I was comfortable, and my home church was the Free Quaker Church. John worked in the upholstery business with me, and later he was a U.S. Customs agent. We cared for the sick and the poor. In addition to sewing, I had a lot of homemade remedies, and they worked. And people came from far and wide, the poor and the sick, and we were able to help them. We were able to give back some of what we had lost during the war effort. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed, which ended the Revolutionary War. I had 5 daughters with Mr. Claypool. In 1785, our daughter Clarissa was born. 1786, our daughter Susanna was born. In 1789, our daughter Rachel was born. In 1792, our daughter Jane was born. In 1793, the Philadelphia yellow fever epidemic hit. My father died, my mother died, and my sister died. It left my niece an orphan, and I took her in to raise her. In 1795, my little daughter Harriet Claypool was born and died in infancy. In 1800, my husband John suffered a severe stroke, and he was an invalid for 17 years, and I cared for him for all of those 17 years at home. My daughters and I sold upholstery and made flags, banners, and standards for the United States. In 1810, I made 6 garrison flags. They were huge, and they went to New Orleans. In 1811, I made 27 flags for the Indian Department. In 1812, my widowed daughter Clarissa moved in, with 5 young children and another on the way.
Oh.
Our house was again filled with children's laughter. What a blessing. Clarissa went into business with me, and we continued our upholstery and flag making efforts for the war and for the Continental Army and the new United States. In 1827, my vision began to fail, and Clarissa had to take over the business, and I went to live with my daughter Susanna on a farm, and there I've been for 7 years. Now Susanna feels like I shouldn't drive my carriage anymore. I'm going to my Quaker meetings every week, and she doesn't want me to drive my carriage anymore. Now what do you think? If first knows the way, I tell her we'll be fine. But she says, Mama, you can't see anymore. You just can't drive. She's trying to take the reins away. What can I do? In 1833, they decided I was legally blind, and I moved to live with my daughter Jane. And I live at number 63 Cherry Street in Pennsylvania. There was a poem written about me. I'd like to read it for you. Said Washington to Betsy Ross, a flag our nation needs, to lead our valiant soldiers on to high and noble deeds. Now can you make one for us? To which she made reply, I am not certain if I can, but at least I'll gladly try. So she took some red for the blood they shed, some white for purity, some stars so bright from the sky overhead, some blue for loyalty, and sewed them all together for loyal hearts and true, and hand in hand as one we stand, for the red, the white, and the blue. Said Betsy Ross to Washington, your country's flag, behold. And through his tear-dimmed eyes he saw the stars and stripes unfold. Then to his breast he clasped it and looked to heaven above. Oh, may it ever stand, he cried, for right and truth and love. I want to thank you for coming and sharing this day with me. This is a wonderful country in which we live, and I'm grateful to have been a part of its